Let me just double check that everything is live. We're live on Twitch. We're live on YouTube Shorts. We're live on YouTube. Lovely. How are we feeling? Let me just close in a couple of bits. There we go. We are all set up half an hour before the start of the Qatar Sprint Race. I'm excited for this one. I feel like there has to be some movers and shakers. We're seeing a lot of talk about the tires already, and they've only got to do 19 laps during this sprint race, but already some people are a little bit scared about even doing 19 laps on these tires. Hello, everybody. How are we? Hello, Sally in the chat. Hello, Josh as well. Timothy, TJ, Mark. How are we all feeling? Oh, I haven't turned the chat on. That's a good point. I'll do that. So the chat on the actual stream also updates as we go through. We have got about half an hour or so. Hello, Sarah. How's it going? Kyra just screams Piastri, starting on pole position for this one. We were talking about it before, weren't we? The fact that we're coming into some Grand Prix that Oscar Piastri actually likes again. Since leaving Azerbaijan, it has felt a little bit tough being an Oscar Piastri fan. There hasn't been a lot to shout about. But now we're back in Qatar. He's back on pole position once again. Bodes well for the full qualifying that we've got later today. But before we get to that, we've got to do a sprint race. Piastri wins. Some people say Max in the chat as well. I think it's going to be close. Who have we got winning IC? That is the question. We will see. We're only about, an hour away from really understanding who is going to win this one. Oscar needs to dominate to get his mojo back. And he's one session down, 3 sessions to go. But, not the Circuit of the Americas. Click the wrong one. There we go. Predictions. I'd love to know yours in the comments. Obviously, we'll do the full race predictions later today when it comes to the full qualifying session. But we can almost have predictions just particularly for the sprint. Who's looking good? Who's looking bad? Who can we see sitting on the podium? Maybe there's a shock result incoming and some drivers that look to be not having the best of times, and some teams that also look to be not having the best of times. A little bit of an update for you in terms of the grid. There will be 4 drivers starting from the pit lane, although all 4 of those drivers dropped out in Q1 yesterday, so doesn't really change the order all that much. Lance Stroll, Lewis Hamilton, Pierre Gasly, and Franco Colapinto all deciding to make some dramatic setup changes to their car. Obviously, they are allowed, all the drivers are allowed to make setup changes to their car between the sprint race and full qualifying later today. So there is that conditions where they're allowed to swap things around in there. But if you want to swap some dramatic things around between sprint qualifying and the sprint race, you have to put yourself at the back of the pack. Those 4 drivers deciding to do so. All that does is change Liam Lawson's grid position. He jumps up to 16th place on the grid as Lance Stroll drops into the pit lane. Everybody else staying where they are. And we'll run through all 20 drivers in a moment. McLaren will get disqualified. Oh, God. I really hope not. My nation turned 60 years old in August. Congratulations, I guess. Sainz for surprise. I mean, he's up there, isn't he, Carlos Sainz? Starting inside of the top 10. You could say Fernando Alonso starting inside of the top 4 is going to be the surprise of the sprint race. Imagine Fernando winning that sprint race. I wouldn't say no to it, as much as it wouldn't really help the championship battle too much, really. I don't think I'd say no to a Fernando Alonso standing on the top step of the podium. Although, it's that debate, isn't it? Because we talk about Lewis Hamilton getting that sprint win for Ferrari. Does it really count as a win? Does it count as a podium? If not, he hasn't had a podium all season, Lewis Hamilton. So How much do you really, really believe that sprints are part of the zeitgeist of Formula One in the way that we look at statistics? Papaya rules, Max gets disqualified. I mean, that would certainly play into Lando Norris's favor. Of course, he needs to outscore both Verstappen and Piastri by at least a point and win the Grand Prix, and then he will be a champion. Or if he can just outscore both of them by 2 points across the weekend, he will also be crowned champion. We could see Lando Norris take his first Drivers' World Championship this weekend. Not in the sprint, not as Max Verstappen did a couple of years ago, taking his, was it the third championship in the Qatar Sprint Race. Can't wait for Piastri to win today and then double McLaren TNF tomorrow. I feel like an Oscar Piastri win gains 2 points on Lando Norris as it stands, Mr. Pulse. So it would get a little bit closer. Then a double DNF. I mean, a double DNF for McLaren could even see Max Verstappen lead the championship going into Abu Dhabi. Of course, if he manages to win the Grand Prix, as he has done here, a couple of years in a row now, Max Verstappen's been pretty dominant when it's actually come to the Qatar weekend. Here we go. Predictions. First, Piastri. Second, Verstappen. Third, Russell. We're expecting Max Verstappen to come all the way from fifth up to, sixth. Although effectively fifth. He's got Yuki Tsunoda ahead of him. Sixth on the grid, though, Max Verstappen. Up to second place. Surprise Tsunoda. Surprise Tsunoda has been, I mean, reasonable shout. Tsunoda actually up in fifth place. So a very solid start for him. I think the problem Tsunoda's going to have is he's going to have to let Max Verstappen past at the start of the Grand Prix. The other thing that Yuki Tsunoda could do, if we're talking conspiracy theories and we're talking a little bit of shenanigans, Yuki Tsunoda could, look at the rear wing of that McLaren car in front of him and maybe just brake a little bit too late for turn one. Like, it's not outside of the realms of possibility. Yuki Tsunoda was talking earlier on this weekend about how it can only be good for him if he helps Max Verstappen to win the Drivers' World Championship in terms of his future in Formula One. Sure, Red Bull would give him a lovely little bonus if he was able to take out one of the McLaren cars at the start of this sprint race and possibly gain Max Verstappen a good chunk of points. 24 points, it's not impossible. Max Verstappen has overturned a 104-point deficit to Oscar Piastri in the last 7 rounds. So not impossible that Max Verstappen comes from 24 points behind the championship lead. In terms of that Drivers' Championship board, let's remind us of it. Lando Norris, 390 at the moment. Piastri, 366. Verstappen, 366. And then it's also a little bit of a debate as to who's going to come out ninth in the championship. 7th place going to be Kimi Antonelli. 9th place in the championship. Isaac Hadjar, 51 points. Hulkenberg, 49. Carlos Sainz, 48. Carlos Sainz starting inside of the point scoring positions, which would gain him a point and move him level with Nico Hulkenberg. Isaac Hadjar starting down in 11th place. Nico Hulkenberg down in 14th. So we are definitely looking at a midfield battle that could certainly rage on in these last 2 rounds of the season. Ollie Behrman also trying to get himself in the mix, but Haas not looking the same team that they have been over the last few race weekends with Ollie Behrman anymore. Fernando Alonso starting in 4th place. That would be 5 points for the Spaniard. That would jump him up to 45. And again, put him right in the mix with that 9th place battle in the midfield. Kind of dropping down Lawson, Ocon, Stroll, and Tsunoda down in 17th place, but with an opportunity today to at least move himself above Ocon and Stroll if he finishes where he starts. Although I can't see that happening because I can only imagine him letting Max Verstappen by as early in this Grand Prix as possible. Pierre Gasly, 22 points. Gabriel Bortoleto, 19. Doesn't feel like the Alpines are going to be able to do too much this afternoon. Pierre Gasly, Franco Colapinto, both starting from the pit lane. Shall we talk about our lineup then? Because, I've got the championship board up there as well. Let's close that very quickly. There you go. Here is our starting grid. Well, make our way down. Has there ever been a penalty where they took away points instead of disqualification, places, and time? Oh, that is a good question. Not that I can think of off the top of my head, but I think it's just a very awkward thing. Like, drivers have been disqualified from championships before, but that's kind of like taking away all of their points. Or, for instance, constructors as well. Constructors have been disqualified from championships before, so they've taken away all of their points. I can't think of an example of a race, say, where, I mean, disqualifying does just take away your points for that weekend, right? You could say Lando Norris missed out on 18 points last weekend, kind of the same as taking 18 points away from him being disqualified. But no, that is a good question. Max is great at gaining positions at the start itself. So Max chase Piastri in the rest of the race, and Norris will go out of track at the start itself. I think you're just thinking back to last weekend when Las Vegas, when Lando Norris had too many eyes for Max Verstappen, really, didn't he? And was focusing on the Red Bull more than the entry to turn one, sent himself wide and ended up disappearing off the racetrack, allowing Max Verstappen to take first place and actually take the lead. But I feel like Lando Norris has learned from that mistake. He said himself he kind of did it too much, and now preparing for this weekend in a slightly different way. Before we run down the 20 places, though, also want to talk about the tyres, because we know going into the Grand Prix itself, there is a mandated 25-lap limit in terms of those tyres. Yeah, Josh, they were the two I was thinking of as well when Schumacher and McLaren both got disqualified from the season. But I can't think of any time they've been like minus 10 points to you or something like that. Usually a disqualification costs you the points that you would have got anyway, right? So it's kind of the way of getting around that deducting points. But I was going to mention the tyres. The tyres, 25 laps mandated during the Grand Prix. Now, obviously, we're not going to have 25 laps here. We have only 19 laps during this sprint race. So we're not going to have to worry about pit stops. Or are we? Because actually, a lot of the tyres from yesterday's sprint qualifying, they were talking about how the tyres have got quite big cuts through them, and also the gravel is causing a lot of problems for the tyres as well. The gravel traps that have been added to try and de-incentivize the drivers from going off of the racing line and pushing the cars too hard. They've added 3 extra gravel traps to the Qatar Grand Prix circuit. Actually, that ended up just pushing quite a lot of gravel onto the track. And therefore, when that gravel was on the track, it started causing mayhem with the tyres as well. Did the bouncing issue in sprint qualifying happen only to Max and not Yuki? I think it was both. It was both of those. When does it start? We're about 15 minutes away from the start of the sprint race here in Qatar. So 15 minutes. Get yourselves locked in. If you are here as well, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. It really does help out the channel, trying to hit 150,000 subscribers before the end of the year. We gained quite a lot yesterday, actually. I think that bonus free practice 1 stream kind of did us a few favors. And we are about 2,500 away from to 150,000. So if you could hit that subscribe button, that'd be absolutely amazing. Why would you do a pit stop in a sprint race? Oh, no, you don't have to. Absolutely don't have to. Like, it would be silly to do a pit stop during the sprint race. But it's not so much that it's not so much that I'm expecting the pit stops to come out. It's more so that I think the tires could be a real concern in this sprint race. I think actually the fact that the teams are struggling so much with those tires, and the fact that they had big cuts on them, you know, do we end up seeing somebody get a puncture along the way? Then do we see like a safety car or something happen? Brings the grid back together again. Like, it really could mix up this sprint race if we do end up seeing just someone's tires go wrong. Did I watch Adelaide 500 Supercars race? I did not. No, I was at B&Q earlier today. That's how exciting my life is at the moment. I was looking at paint colors for the bedroom that is upstairs. There you go. It's as exciting as my morning got. Go Loris. Close. Lando Norris starting from third place. Shall we run down the grid then? I know I've had it on the screen for a little while, but let's discuss the twos and the fro's. Oscar Piastri starting on pole position. If he starts there, finishes there, he gains 8 points. He is 24 points behind Lando Norris in the championship right now. And every point counts at this point in the season because there's not long left. Piastri was leading the championship from Saudi Arabia all the way up until Mexico. And then he fell away from the top of the standings. It was that stint post-Baku, was it? Well, including Baku. But Baku was bad. Austin, not great either. Mexico, Brazil even wasn't great for Oscar Piastri as well. Las Vegas, not one to really write home about. So Piastri's had a real tricky stint that middle part of the season. But now back into it, back to a venue where he's been very, very successful before. He has won a sprint race here in Qatar a couple of years ago. It was kind of overshadowed by the fact that Max Verstappen went on to win his third championship that same afternoon. But he did manage to get that first victory in a Formula One car during a sprint race in Qatar. And it was when Piastri kind of started to click a little bit more with McLaren. Maybe he's back to clicking with it once again. George Russell starting in second place. He was even a little bit surprised to be there, to be honest. George Russell, I think, was expecting more from the car in Vegas. Didn't quite get the setup that he wanted. Had those steering issue problems. And I know that he'll be looking at first place today and another victory on his sheet for Mercedes. He's been very positive about 2026. He knows he's in the right place if Mercedes can deliver, the Mercedes power unit being the strongest of the bunch. But we'll have to wait and see what he can do this afternoon. Lando Norris, current championship leader, fighting for his first championship in Formula One. He starts from third place. Fernando Alonso just delivered. I don't know what it is about Aston Martin. They do seem to be able to do it when sprint races, sprint weekends in particular, when I think Fernando Alonso kind of mentioned it before, he can use a little bit more of his experience to guide the team in a right direction, because you only get one free practice session. You only get 25, 30 laps maximum to kind of run around and see what the car is going to do across the weekend during that first free practice. And that's if you're really hammering in the laps. But Alonso does just seem to have a little bit of nous when it comes to a sprint weekend. He's been in Brazil. He was leading a qualifying session. What was it? SQ2? I think he was the fastest man in SQ2 in Brazil, possibly SQ1. Might be mixing those up. But Fernando Alonso, sprint qualifying, just manages to be able to do it. Let's see if he can get some points on the board this afternoon. Sitting a little further back from 9th place in the championship than he'd have really liked to be. He's got Hulkenberg and Hadjar and those drivers ahead. Behrman as well now ahead in the championship. He'll want to close that gap, and Aston Martin will also want to close that gap when it comes to the Constructors' Championship as well. Behind that is a double trouble Red Bull, but it's the first time Max Verstappen has been out-qualified in 440 days, which is just over a year. Sergio Perez, the last driver who was able to out-qualify Max Verstappen in a Red Bull. Since then, we've seen Liam Lawson and Yuki Tsunoda give it a go across this season. Tsunoda finally quicker than Verstappen in a full qualifying session. So Tsunoda starts 5th, Verstappen starts 6th. All I can see is that swapping as soon as the red lights drop, if I'm honest with you. I can't imagine Tsunoda doing, well, Tsunoda's either going to go forwards into the side of a McLaren car, or he's going to slot back in behind Max Verstappen as soon as he possibly can and allow Max Verstappen to be the driver that then has a go at the back of Fernando Alonso and then Lando Norris. I want to see Verstappen get up into 4th place fairly swiftly, and it will be interesting to see if Fernando Alonso kind of puts up much of a fight for 4th place when Verstappen is going to be hounding him over the first few laps of this Grand Prix. Like, I think Verstappen is going to be up in 4th place fairly swiftly, and then it's the battle between Verstappen and Norris that we really want to see. Could massively play into Oscar Piastri's favour, by the way. If Tsunoda does wipe out Norris, or Verstappen and Norris even come together and wipe one another out, Piastri could gain 8 points while his championship rivals settle for nothing. Kimi Antonelli starts in 7th place. He was a little bit disappointed with his qualifying, but actually got fairly lucky to get through to Q3. It was a lap time deleted from Isaac Hadjar, we can see down there in 11th place, which opened the door for Kimi Antonelli to make his way through to Q3, and then couldn't quite put together the lap that he was comfortable with. Only starts in 7th place. The Italian, though, off the back of an insane drive in Las Vegas, where he went from 16th place to on the podium after the disqualifications from the 2 McLaren cars. So Antonelli found a little bit of form in Vegas. Can he continue that on for the final 2 rounds of the season? Carlos Sainz, the final man who starts inside of the point scoring places today. The Spaniard looking for another set of points. Like, since the summer break, Carlos Sainz has been a completely different beast over the course of these final few rounds of the season, really honing in and trying to get that position in the championship just behind his teammate Alex Albon. I feel like that would be a real statement from Williams if they were not only able to claim 5th in the Constructors' Championship, but also had both of their drivers as best of the rest in the midfield. Like, Albon is there. Those points are safe. You've got those. But with Carlos Sainz, if he could get 9th place in the driver's standings, like, that would be absolutely insane from the Williams team, considering they have done nothing to that car this year. They have been working on 2026 for the entirety of the 2025 season. Charles Leclerc starts in 9th place. Ferrari said a similar thing. Fred Vasseur came out and said in April, the Ferrari team decided to start focusing on 2026 more so than 2025 after the dominance of McLaren was clear to see in the first few rounds of the season. But Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton still not happy inside of that Ferrari car and starting just outside of the points. Charles Leclerc also a little bit frustrated with how Carlos Sainz dealt with that final round of qualifying. There was a bit of a tete-a-tete between Carlos Sainz and Charles Leclerc. Charles Leclerc actually said in an interview afterwards he's going to get back at him in this Grand Prix. So I think we could see some fireworks between the 2 ex-Ferrari teammates, Carlos Sainz and Charles Leclerc. Good friends off track, not friends on track anymore. And Alex Albon, the man who is alongside Carlos Sainz now at Williams, starts inside of the top 10. Couple of places away from the points, though, in the sprint. But the Williams, again, looking the best of the rest in terms of those midfield cars. In terms of the duo, I know Fernando Alonso is up there in 4th place, but Sainz and Albon, both of those cars inside of the top 10, bodes well for later today in terms of the full qualifying sessions that we had. Although Carlos Sainz was a little bit wary, actually, because he said that it was much better and much more stable on the medium tyre inside of that Williams car. So actually, maybe come later today when they have to qualify on the soft compound tyre. Now, I'm thinking about it in a little bit more detail. It might be a bit trickier for Carlos Sainz and Alex Albon. Isaac Hadjar starts in 11th place, just outside of the top 10. It was a lap time deletion from him. It was millimeters between him and Antonelli, possibly swapping places. But Isaac Hadjar starting in 11th. Ollie Behrman starts in 12th. Has been on a real run of form, Ollie Behrman, in the second half of the season, particularly the last sort of 3 or 4 Grand Prix. Mexico really stands out for Ollie Behrman. He was sublime. Starts in 12th place. Bortoleto and Hulkenberg behind. And then the Stake Sauber car in between the 2 Hasses, as Esteban Ocon was 15th fastest. Liam Lawson jumps up into 16th place. He was down in the bottom 5 yesterday, qualified in 17th, but gains a position because Lance Stroll, Lewis Hamilton, Pierre Gasly, and Franco Colapinto all starting from the pit lane. Whew, breathe a sigh of relief. Little 8-minute rundown of the grid there and all the news that you need to know about each of the drivers running around these 19 laps of the Lusail Grand Prix. Going to have some tyres coming in very soon. Oh, looking like some drivers are going for some used mediums. Used mediums across the board, actually. Now that they come across the line, we're allowed to see what tyres they have selected. And everybody going for slightly scrubbed sets of medium tyres, apart from Hamilton, Gasly, and Colapinto. But they're starting inside of the pit lane, remember? So they're not going to be much of a problem for the rest of the grid. That is very interesting, especially considering a lot of the drivers and a lot of the teams after yesterday were saying to Pirelli, like, look, these tyres have got big grooves in them. There's some cuts across the tread of the tyre. There is a lot of gravel embedding itself into these wheels. Everybody deciding to go for a used set of mediums. I think that's also because the medium tire is going to be so pivotal come the full Grand Prix. I think it's going to end up being obviously a two-stop strategy for the majority, but I think we're going to see soft, medium for the Grand Prix tomorrow. So everybody trying to hold on to those medium tires and not use hard compound tires. It would have been interesting if somebody... Oh, no, they're coming in. It's a little bit of a swap. I was going to say, be interesting to see if they actually go for the hard compound tire, and it looks like a few actually are going for the hard compound tire. Don't know what's going on with the telemetry. We'll give it a second to load itself in. I was going to say, if I was sort of in the lower parts of the points and maybe just slightly outside, I would have gone for the hard compound tire because I'd want to keep hold of some medium compound tires just in case I needed them for the race, because the medium compound tire is gonna be the one that you want to use. So interesting now. Lando Norris, Fernando Alonso, Tsunoda, Verstappen, Antonelli deciding on the hard compound tire. So just Piastri and Russell at the front of the grid on the medium tire. Carlos Sainz also starting on a slightly scrubbed set of mediums as well. Leclerc and Albon on the hard. Hadjar on the hard compound tire as well. Behrman decides on the medium. Bortoletto on the hard. Hulkenberg, Ocon, Lawson, Stroll, Hamilton on the medium tire. A fresh set of mediums for Lewis Hamilton. Gasly on the hard compound tire. Franco Colapinto on a fresh set of mediums. Interesting indeed. But let's move over to the full race board then and prepare ourselves for the runaround of the Lusail Grand Prix circuit. 19 laps during the sprint race. We don't have to worry about pit stops, even with the 25-lap mandated pit stop. Although actually, you look at Piastri and Russell. I know they're on a scrub set, but technically, Piastri will do... Oh, no, Piastri is just underneath, right? He's done 5 laps on those medium tyres and 19 laps of this circuit, so we'll have done 24 laps on those tyres at the end of this Grand Prix. But Lance Stroll, that's an interesting one. He's starting on a 7-lap-old set of medium tyres by the telemetry that we've got right now. By my calculations, if you do 7 laps on those yesterday and then 19 laps on those today, that's 26 laps. And of course, they're only supposed to do 25 laps on a set of tyres here in Qatar. So I wonder how that kind of works. I know it's not one stint. You could argue that, he did those 7 laps yesterday in sprint qualifying and now is doing 19 laps in... full racing conditions in the sprint today. So there are 2 separate sessions and 2 separate stints on those tyres, but still more than 25 laps being completed by Lance Stroll if he does make it to the end. We'll have to wait and see what that does. I've just dropped the lid of my pen. Here's the lid of my pen. Hoping for an Alonso podium. Want to see Norris and Max are doing. Both of them are going to go at it non-stop. I mean, they have to. Yeah, that rule is just for the full race, but it's just interesting to see, you're only allowed to do 25 laps in the Grand Prix, but you're allowed to do 26 laps over the course of a qualifying and a sprint race. It just feels like a bit of a weird scenario that Formula One has put itself in, where the rules are kind of convoluted, aren't they? Although you could say that about Formula One in general. The rules are fairly convoluted. We've got 67 likes. I mean, we can definitely get that up to 100 likes, can't we, guys? Everybody should be hitting that like button. It's completely and utterly free, and it really does help out the channel more than you would imagine. Just get these streams going. There's, 300 of you in the main stream chat? I feel like we should definitely be hitting that like button and getting over the hump of 100 likes on the stream. Piastri gets us underway for the formation lap. Oh, just going to change this around a tiny little bit. Track map is just a tad big. Slot that in there. $87 now. We're getting there. Who will be the 100th like on the stream? That is the real question. Which way are they racing? Clockwise in terms of the screen that you are going to see. So Lewis Hamilton, Lance Stroll just leaving the pit lane now and going left down towards turn 1. Oscar Piastri, you can see, up at turn 8 at the moment, making his way round and down to turn 10. Lando Norris still leading the championship, 390 points. Both of his championship rivals just 24 points behind, with 33 points available this weekend, another 25 points available next, 58 points still on the cards, and a big swing could still come. Actual qualifying is going on now. It is not. Actual qualifying is later today. We will be back live for actual qualifying. So make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss that extra stream that we're going to have later on today as well. Double streams for you this afternoon. And then, of course, we're back live again for the full Grand Prix later on tomorrow. Piastri backs up the pack as he manages to make his way around to turn 16, getting a little bit of temperature into those medium tyres. George Russell, the nearest competitor, also starting on the medium tyres, does the same. Some burnouts moving onto the grid and the weaving of the Formula One cars. Lando Norris slotting in third place, Alonso 4th, Tsunoda 5th, Verstappen 6th, Antonelli 7th, and Carlos Sainz starting inside of the points scoring places as Oscar Piastri comes to a stop and is stationary in his pit box for the start of this sprint race. Lando Norris will sit right underneath the rear wing of his teammate. Yuki Tsunoda slots in behind the McLaren cars. On the other side of the grid, Fernando Alonso has taken his spot and is stationary, just waiting for Stroll, Hamilton, Gasly, and Colapinto to peel off into the pit lane. They do indeed. And Liam Lawson is the man that we are waiting to just fully stop as the medical car also takes its place at the back of the grid. There is the racing bull of Liam Lawson. I'm nervous. I wasn't until I just saw Liam Lawson take his position. Then it all hit me. I've got the goosebumps, ladies and gentlemen. 5 red lights stand between us and 19 laps of this sprint race in Qatar. And we have got no red lights still. Oh, the cars are very stationary right now, and eventually the lights come on. Little bit of a delay as Oscar Piastri looks at those red lights and makes his move across. He's covered off George Russell. Lando Norris has got a very good start. So is Yuki Tsunoda behind, and Tsunoda's going to go side by side with Russell and Norris, and also fighting, and Tsunoda trying to go up the inside. Max Verstappen having a battle with Fernando Alonso behind, but it's a really good start from Yuki Tsunoda. He's moved up a position. Fernando Alonso has moved to one side, and Max Verstappen has made up that position. Yuki Tsunoda also probably trying to get out of the way of his teammate, I would imagine. And Verstappen trying to get past Yuki Tsunoda up into 4th place. Alonso has dropped down into 6th. Piastri, Russell, and Norris where they started in 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. Kimi Antonelli is also battling with Isaac Hadjar now for 7th place. It was a stunning start from the racing bull of Isaac Hadjar. He's now up into 8th place. Sainz also battling with him, though, and reclaims that point-scoring position as the Spaniard moves back up into 8th, and Isaac Hadjar moves down into 9th place once again. Albon in 10th, Bortoleto up into 11th. It's been a nightmare start for Charles Leclerc as he now gets outdone by Ollie Behrman. Behrman moves back up into 12th, and Leclerc all the way down into 13th place. Piastri, Russell, Norris are top 3 then as we come around towards the final sector. Max Verstappen has indeed moved past Yuki Tsunoda as expected. So Verstappen now hunting down his championship rival Lando Norris as they come down the pit straight. It is Piastri, Russell, Norris are top 3. Verstappen in 4th place, very close to the rear wing of that McLaren car. Tsunoda has dropped off a touch into 5th place. Then Alonso, Antonelli, and Sainz still inside of the point scoring places until Isaac Hadjar has a little look up the inside of the Williams car down in towards turn 1, but not able to do anything this time around. Carlos Sainz hold on to 8th place right now, but Hadjar up 2 positions into 9th spot. Bortoleto also up a couple of places into 11th. Charles Leclerc, the biggest loser, down 4 positions from the start and in 13th place. So Charles Leclerc, who was hoping for some points to be on the board for Ferrari, is going to again see the Ferrari team fall away in the Constructors' Championship. both of the Red Bulls and both of the Mercedes cars inside of the point scoring places as it stands. DRS now enabled, as we can see from the race control messages just above my head. Max Verstappen well within that DRS range as well. Piastri has been able to get himself away from George Russell. Russell 1.4 seconds adrift. Then Lando Norris also not within DRS range of the Mercedes car ahead. So it's Max Verstappen, the first man within DRS touching distance. And it is DRS from turn 16 down towards turn 1. You've got to be within touching distance just after turn 15. You can see the DRS detection point there on the graphic above me. And then Max Verstappen is going to have that rear wing of the Red Bull car wide open, closing into the back of Lando Norris, but not close enough to have a look this time around. Has a little glance at the side of the McLaren car just to let Lando Norris that he was there. George Russell actually setting the fastest lap of the Grand Prix so far. Thank you guys so much. There was a super chat in there that I missed. $5. Thank you so much. Let me get it right. If Norris wins this sprint, then doesn't he necessarily have to win the main GP to win the championship? He just needs to outscore Piastri and Verstappen by 2 points over the course of this weekend. If he goes into the next Grand Prix in Abu Dhabi with a 26-point lead, the championship is over and done with. So he just needs to outscore both of his championship rivals by 2 points over the course of both today and tomorrow. Of course, if he does win this sprint, then it's looking very good to do so, but he cannot guarantee the win in this sprint race today because he can't move far enough ahead. Still 50 points available over the 2 full Grand Prix that we have got. But we're seeing a replay now of Max Verstappen again looking at the side of Lando Norris's McLaren car. Lando Norris is going to be very aware of the fact that Max Verstappen is right there behind him as we go into lap 3 of this, moving into lap 4 as Piastri comes across the start-finish line. Piastri looking comfortable. Verstappen, though, right underneath the rear wing of Lando Norris. And we know that Verstappen is able to make moves where other drivers just haven't been able to. Lando Norris, though, has closed into the back of George Russell and has opened up his DRS. So that's not going to play into Verstappen's favor at all. The Mercedes car of George Russell actually being not far enough away from Lando Norris at the moment. So Max Verstappen not with any real DRS advantage. Verstappen, though, stays within that half a second of Lando Norris. Yuki Tsunoda has kind of orchestrated the rest of the cars a couple of seconds back from this pack of 2. Imagine Tsunoda being a little bit of a buffer. And we know Fernando Alonso can put together a DRS train when he needs to. So Fernando Alonso holding off Kimi Antonelli in 6th place. The Spaniard losing out. He does have DRS Antonelli, but Alonso just knows where to put that car and when. Antonelli, the youngest driver on the grid. Fernando Alonso, the oldest. Verstappen on the radio. The bouncing is still very bad, so still not comfortable inside of that Red Bull car. We heard him talk about it a lot yesterday during sprint qualifying. That the Red Bull car bouncing around like a kangaroo. But Max Verstappen closing into the back of Lando Norris nonetheless. And Norris has lost his DRS to... oh, no, he hasn't. He has still got DRS to George Russell. Must have just about been within that second of George Russell as they came through turn 15. Didn't look like he was within a second coming around turn 16. So Norris just playing the margins to his favor at the moment. Norris 1.1 seconds adrift of George Russell. And just keeping himself inside of that DRS range when he needs to. Piastri sets the fastest lap of the Grand Prix so far with a 124.9. Fernando Alonso did not get the best of starts. Neither did Max Verstappen, to be honest with you. Verstappen ended up having to fight off Kimi Antonelli. Then Fernando Alonso was put to one side by Yuki Tsunoda, which allowed Verstappen the space to just push Fernando Alonso out of 5th place as well. And then Tsunoda also, of course, letting his teammate pass. So Piastri, Russell, Norris still our top 3. Verstappen the closest to them. Tsunoda 5th, Alonso 6th, Antonelli 7th, and Carlos Sainz in 8th. And we can see that move Verstappen made on Tsunoda. And again, Tsunoda not really putting up too much of a fight. And Verstappen getting by as soon as it was available to do so. Lando Norris does not look within DRS range this time around. And George Russell is slightly escaping away from the McLaren car. The medium tyres, of course, on Piastri and Norris's car. Oh, sorry, Piastri and Russell's car are going to play against them as the laps continue to tick down. Norris, Verstappen, Tsunoda on the hard compound tyre behind. Alonso and Antonelli the same. Carlos Sainz would be an interesting one to keep an eye on. He started on the medium tyre. It's now obviously done 11 laps on those medium tyres. Although the lap data doesn't seem to be updating for the hard compound tyre runners. Apologies for that. But all of the hard compound tyres were new hard compound tyres. So they've done as many laps as the Grand Prix has been running for. Lando Norris has lost his DRS and Max Verstappen is teetering on that edge of being a second adrift. Track limits starting to be engaged for Charles Leclerc. He's had a lap time deleted and a track limits warning for the Ferrari. He's still down in 13th place, and we know that it's tricky to overtake here in Qatar. It's a very awkward circuit for these Formula One cars. It's a MotoGP circuit before it was a Formula One circuit. It's a very different build, a MotoGP bike compared to a Formula One car. And Max Verstappen does have his rear wing open once again. Max Verstappen closing in, but still cannot be within Lando Norris's, or cannot be within a distance to really strike at Lando Norris. Needs to come around turn 16 within about half a second or so of Lando Norris to really have a go at him. Gap was 0.8. And Verstappen also not happy on the radio either. The radio crackling in his ears and not allowing him to hear GP very comfortably. As it stands, the championship would be falling away from Verstappen. He's behind Lando Norris, would lose out by a point to Lando Norris, which means he would be 25 points adrift. Still with 50 points to play for. But Verstappen needs to start doing something a little bit special soon if he is going to be able to get past Lando Norris in all of this. But Lando Norris, if he just finishes third, gets Verstappen done. Verstappen actually falling away from the back of Lando Norris in that last lap. 1.3 seconds now the gap between. So Norris has been able to clear the DRS threat away from Verstappen, and Verstappen sounds like he's struggling inside of that car. Charles Leclerc trying to make a move on Ollie Behrman. Possible Ferrari teammates of the future. But Behrman closes the door on the more experienced Ferrari man and gains, or stays in 12th place for now. Charles Leclerc trying to climb his way back up into the point scoring places, but is 5 places down on Carlos Sainz, who is the final point scoring runner. Hadjar, the closest man to it. Albon, Bortoleto, Behrman at the back. Fernando Alonso has dropped down to 6th place, but Fernando Alonso holding strong there, still keeping in Antonelli at arm's length. Antonelli 7th place at the moment. Oh, a replay of Carlos Sainz. Oh, that's a little bit of the Williams car actually comes off of it. Don't know where that has come from on the Williams car. Is that a piece of flooring possibly, or a wing end plate? Difficult to see from that angle, but something has come unstuck from the side of that Williams car, and Carlos Sainz continues on without it. Lando Norris escaping away from Verstappen now. That gap nearing the 2-second margin. As they come around again. Russell 1.6 seconds adrift. Norris is 2 seconds adrift of George Russell. Then Verstappen another 2 seconds back. So Tsunoda 2 seconds, Alonso 2 seconds. It's looking like everybody is starting to find a little bit of a problem with their tires and having to get some cooler air running over their cars as to not completely disintegrate the Pirelli rubber. Everyone's slotting back and filing into position for now. Or maybe see the pace increase once again once we get towards the end of this Grand Prix and a few of the drivers have to go for moves. Max Verstappen, the most desperate of them. Of course, if Lando Norris gains 2 points on Verstappen this weekend, then Verstappen is out of the championship. So even though he can see Oscar Piastri 2 places ahead of him, he can see Verstappen behind. And to be honest, if he can go into next weekend and have 1 championship rival rather than 2, it does massively help out Lando Norris and just plays into taking a little bit more of the pressure off of him, especially if that championship rival is Oscar Piastri. He can keep tabs on him a little bit more. Charles Leclerc has another little look at Ollie Behrman. Charles Leclerc is not lying down in 13th place. He wants to make moves. But Charles Leclerc not able to get past Behrman, even with the DRS open. It's within half a second of the Haas car. But as soon as he dives up in the inside of turn one, just a bit too much of a loop around. The car's not able to close that gap. And Ollie Behrman able to close the door moderately comfortably. It's not beautiful from Ollie Behrman in any way, but does the job and keeps Charles Leclerc behind. Oscar Piastri still leading this sprint race. Russell, Lando, Verstappen, Tsunoda, Alonso, all falling 2 seconds behind the most close driver in front of them. Antonelli is the only driver still within DRS range inside of the point scoring places. Antonelli not really closing the gap on Fernando Alonso any more than that. It's sort of 0.8 of a second, bubbles up to 0.9 of a second sometimes, but mainly just hovers around that 0.8 margin. And Carlos Sainz is looking fairly comfortable inside of 8th place, as well as Hadjar has dropped a couple of seconds off and has got Albon to deal with behind, more so than looking at Carlos Sainz ahead. Alex Albon trying to keep Hadjar occupied so that his teammate can build a little bit more of a gap inside of the point scoring places. That is a black and white flag for Yuki Tsunoda and Franco Colapinto. Both of them now with 3 track limits violations. Kimi Antonelli with 1 and Charles Leclerc with 1 as well. So track limits starting to play a little bit of a toll. Yuki Tsunoda needs to be very careful indeed as Charles Leclerc goes side by side with Liam Lawson. Liam Lawson trying to make a move on Charles Leclerc, and Leclerc has been outdone by Lawson there. Lawson did go off the track and over the gravel. Not sure if he got that move done whilst off the racetrack. The stewards will certainly have a little look at that between Liam Lawson and Charles Leclerc. Was Charles Leclerc trying to make a move on Ollie Behrman and they just opened the window for Liam Lawson to try and jump through it? Lawson was then pushed wide as they went round turn 2 together. And Lawson has been told over the radio to give the position back. So Lawson and Leclerc have actually played into Ollie Behrman's hands more than anyone else's there, because Lawson is going to give that position back to Charles Leclerc at some point, or at least has been told to over the radio. And that's allowed Ollie Behrman to escape away from those two. And Lawson does indeed move to the side of the track and allows Charles Leclerc by. Just needs to be careful that Esteban Ocon doesn't take this opportune moment to also close into the back of Liam Lawson's Racing Bull. Doesn't manage to do it this time around. Leclerc, Lawson, Ocon back where they were before that incident between Leclerc and Lawson. Behrman 12th, Leclerc 13th, Lawson 14th, Ocon at 15th place. And there was a little bit of gravel thrown up on the visor of Esteban Ocon as well. Ocon was right behind the battle between Leclerc and Lawson. And there was the dust kicked up by Liam Lawson as he was pushed off the track. The Racing Bulls team decided to give that position back to Charles Leclerc, thinking that Liam Lawson might have gained that advantage off of the racetrack. We are 12 laps of the 19 laps completed. Thank you guys so much for joining us. If you could hit the like button, that'd be absolutely amazing. I don't know how many likes we're on, but we usually get out towards like the 300, maybe even 400 like margin. So see if we can get up there once again. If you're joining us on Twitch, you can give us a little follow. That'd be absolutely incredible as well. And of course, if you're joining us on the YouTube short stream, you can do the same. Leave the stream a little like. We'll be live once again for the full qualifying later on today, but still have a few more laps of this sprint race still to run. George Russell with a little bit of a mistake. George Russell down 2 seconds still behind Oscar Piastri. I think those tyres starting to wear a little more, and Lando Norris has actually closed the gap to 1.8 seconds now. Was 2 seconds before. Can Lando Norris close the gap even more, as he was a 1/10 of a second quicker last time? And it is a 5-second time penalty for Yuki Tsunoda. Tsunoda did not take the warning, and it was another track limits violation for Yuki Tsunoda. That is going to be devastating for Tsunoda. It's going to take him out of 5th place, almost guaranteed. Kimi Antonelli has managed to get past Fernando Alonso up into 6th place, is 2.6 seconds behind. Another 1.7 seconds to Fernando Alonso. So Tsunoda now with a 5-second penalty needs to really get a move on and try and get away from the cars behind him now to consolidate that 5th place. And into the pits comes Lance Stroll. I was wondering, I said at the beginning that Lance Stroll starting on the medium tyre. And actually, they're deciding at Aston Martin that they want a pit stop. It was a pretty horrendous pit stop, actually, a 4.9 second pit stop from the Aston Martin team. And they maybe want to get some laps completed on the soft compound tyre by the looks of things. So Lance Stroll is going to be a little bit of a guinea pig for the Aston Martin team and see how the soft goes in these lighter fuel conditions at the end of the sprint race. Basically using this sprint as a testing session at Aston Martin by the looks of things. Oh, and Yuki Tsunoda, that was such an avoidable jump across the white line. I mean, I haven't seen all 4 of the track limits violations, but that final one that he's picked up that 5-second penalty for was very much avoidable. Tsunoda down in 5th place will become, at the moment, 7th place. Antonelli and Alonso within 5 seconds of the Japanese driver. I'm sure Carlos Sainz has also been told over the radio that the Japanese driver is going to drop back 5 seconds at the end of this race. Carlos Sainz gets a little bit of a move on. Could see 2 points going in his pocket rather than 1. Hadjar in 9th place. Alex Albon down in 10th. The closest competitors to sneaking into the points, but don't think it's going to get quite that bad for Yuki Tsunoda with that 5-second penalty. Unless there's like a safety car or something to end this Grand Prix. Nothing goes well for Yuki, even if it's going well. It does feel that way, doesn't it? Does really feel that way. Every single time, it feels like he's going to have a better weekend or put together a performance that's actually worth talking about. Just something else happens that detracts from that performance from Yuki Tsunoda. Piastri and Russell, still on those scrubbed medium tyres, have now completed 19 and 20 laps on those mediums between them. 16 laps of the race have been completed thus far. Oh, sorry, they're on lap 16 of the race, so 15 laps of the race have been completed thus far as Piastri makes his way around. Getting a bit of a vibration, says Oscar Piastri on the radio. That's not what you want to hear if you're an Oscar Piastri fan. He needs as many things as possible to go into his favour. And Lando Norris, 2 seconds adrift of George Russell. At least George Russell's done Piastri a favour, has taken a point away from his championship rival. It will be 22 points the gap between Piastri and Norris. In fact, we can take a little look at the championship standings if you would like, just as we come towards the end of this. Norris would gain 6 points up to 396. Piastri would gain 8 points, so close that gap to 22 points, 374 for Oscar Piastri. Max Verstappen would be exactly 25 points off the championship lead. Of course, 25 points, the exact amount of race victory would get him. Could see Max Verstappen match Lando Norris in terms of points going into Abu Dhabi if Lando Norris scores 0 to Max Verstappen's 25 in the Grand Prix tomorrow, but that is hypothetical. George Russell would gain 7 points. Antonelli gaining 3 points. Sainz and Alonso gaining a point and 2. Alonso actually moves up above Behrman in terms of the drivers' standings. He's the only mover, though, as even with an additional 4 points, Yuki Tsunoda would only be 17th, and that, of course, is not going to be 4 points for Yuki Tsunoda, likely to drop behind Kimi Antonelli, and then you get 3 points where Antonelli would pick up 4. McLaren outscoring everybody in terms of the constructors. Mercedes getting another 9 points and Red Bull getting another... Mercedes getting another 10 points, Red Bull getting another 9, which again elongates the lead of Mercedes and Red Bull over Ferrari. Ferrari just a couple of races ago, remember, round 20 before the... or just after the Mexican Grand Prix, were sitting second in the constructor standing. It's been a devastating couple of races for Ferrari, and now another... poor weekend starting off here in Qatar. Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton not adding to the Ferrari tally. Williams would gain another point to put them onto 122. Aston Martin would close the gap to 16 points to Racing Bulls ahead, but actually gain enough points to be above Haas in the constructors' standings. They'd move up into 7th place, Haas down into 8th if it remains as it is. And it feels like it is going to remain as it is. Nobody within DRS range of one another. Alex Albon, the only driver who has DRS to Isaac Hadjar, but he has for the entirety of this Grand Prix and hasn't been able to do anything with it. Bortoletto and Behrman and Leclerc have kind of slotted in. Charles Leclerc has closed the gap to Behrman once more, but once he had a go at Charles Leclerc had a go at getting past Ollie Behrman once, and that led to a kerfuffle with Liam Lawson, so not sure he'll bother with that again. And then Ocon, Hülkenberg, Hamilton, Gasly, Colapinto at the back. Lance Stroll just setting the fastest lap of the sprint race, doing a little bit of reconnaissance on the soft compound tyre. Did use a scrub set of softs, though. Oh, as Ollie Behrman did make a pretty dramatic mistake, actually. Ollie Behrman onto the gravel. That's where Liam Lawson and Charles Leclerc have been able to close the gap to him. Charles Leclerc now within 7/10 as Gasly and Colapinto both pit for the Alpine team with a couple of laps left to go in this sprint. I think Gasly and Colapinto, both actually changing tyres. I thought they might just be retiring from the sprint race, but Gasly does seem to have come in and be coming back out again. And the same for Franco Colapinto, maybe just both wanting to get some soft compound tyre running as well at the end of this sprint race. Interesting little reconnaissance missions going on for those teams at the back of the pack. And Oscar Piastri just hoping that they don't get in the way in any way, as he's now coming down towards turn 1 for what will be his final lap of this sprint race. Russell and Norris, 2nd and 3rd. Verstappen has fallen away from his championship rival. He's in 4th spot. Was able to make up a couple of places right at the beginning, but been locked in 4th place since the first lap of the Grand Prix. Tsunoda down in 5th. Has got the gap to Fernando Alonso at least, but will drop down a position, Yuki Tsunoda. Lando Norris just being told to be careful not to run off track in this one. They don't want to be getting any kind of penalties or losing any more points. They know that Piastri is gaining a couple on them and closing that gap to 22 points in the championship. But as I was saying, Yuki Tsunoda is going to drop down to 6th place. Antonelli is going to inherit 5th. Fernando Alonso 7th and Carlos Sainz in 8th spot. Isaac Hadjar has got one last roll of the dice. He's been right underneath Carlos Sainz's rear wing for the entirety of this sprint, but it hasn't really played in his favour in any way. And here comes Oscar Piastri And it's a third sprint win for Oscar Piastri. Of course, his first win in Formula One here a couple of years ago on the same day that Max Verstappen won his third World Championship. Now Oscar Piastri gets to revel in it a little bit more and have the win all to himself. George Russell comes home second, Lando Norris in third, Verstappen in fourth. Antonelli jumps up into fifth place, Tsunoda down to sixth. There's Alonso and Sainz, Hadjar and Albon across the line as well. Bortoletto comes across, Behrman there in 12th place, followed by Leclerc and Lawson. Esteban Ocon comes home in 15th spot, and Hulkenberg down in 16th. Lewis Hamilton still running around and actually pretty significantly slower than the rest of the pack ahead. Lewis Hamilton finishes 6.5 seconds off the back of Nico Hulkenberg and rounds out another pretty miserable day in a Scuderia car. Gasly, Stroll and Colapinto still on the leading lap, but will finish a considerable margin behind after pitting for soft compound tyres at the end. And Piastri, positive about the McLaren car. Haven't heard that overly recently. So we've got to wait and see how it will go later on this afternoon. But Piastri looking quick inside of that McLaren. Lando Norris now 22 points ahead in the standings. Piastri not giving up on it yet. If he could just follow this up, if it goes from 22 points to maybe 12 points, if it was the same but in the Grand Prix where Piastri would win, Norris third, that would be a 10-point swing. So it could go from 22 to 12. Then it really is all to play for when it comes to Abu Dhabi. But Oscar Piastri needs to do that because a Lando Norris win here in Qatar would mean that he would outscore both of the drivers ahead of him, or behind him, sorry, in the championship, and also win him the championship. George Russell on the radio gets his congratulations, and we're going to end the stream there. Thank you guys so much for watching. Massively appreciate you stopping by. We will be back live once again later today. So if you could hit that subscribe button, you'll be notified when we go live. And I massively appreciate it. Hit the like button on your way out. Maybe if you haven't already, check out this week's video. It's the top link in the description, where I kind of asked you guys to do me a favor. And we went through some pretty controversial things, I would say, looking at the comments of that video. So head down there, check out that video if you haven't already. Oh, Yuki Tsunoda has been given that position back. Did Kimi Antonelli also get himself a 5-second penalty? Might have done so. Interesting. But Yuki Tsunoda back up into 5th place, Antonelli down into 6th. There you go. That was how we'll end the stream. Thank you guys so much again. I will see you later.